Hey, we are two Star Wars nerds, and we just finished watching Empire Strikes Back.
Your favorite?
It is.
Yeah.
It is my favorite. I mean, we've seen this movie, I don't even know how many times. An ungodly amount of times, probably. Seriously. But this is my favorite movie of all time, and it's also my favorite Star Wars movie. So I'm excited to talk about this. But today we're going to be talking about why we think Darth Vader in Empire Strikes Back is the perfect villain.
He is.
Really think so.
Yeah.
And just spoiler alert, it's not just because he's evil and he's dark, you know. There's a lot more to it. There's a complexity here. So let's do this. Let's just do this breakdown and just start going after it. Like right off the bat, we see that Vader is obsessed with finding Luke Skywalker. Like absolutely obsessed with finding him. And what makes that so different, you even brought up a point about the difference between Palpatine and Vader. So why don't you even share that, because that's interesting about his obsession with finding Luke.
What I was just noticing as we were rewatching this round is that Vader's very hands-on, like whereas Palpatine like sends people off pretty much throughout the first 6 movies. He's the one sending people off to do things, but Vader's like, I'm gonna go down, I'm gonna take care of it. Like you see him land on Hoth. He's very active in the missions and in looking for Luke and the rebels. So I thought it was kind of cool, because with Palpatine he just kind of sits in his chamber and bosses people around, which is cool. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I think it's even cooler to see Vader actually being present, I guess, and on these missions. He's like, I'm gonna take care of this. Like I don't trust anyone else to do it. That's kind of what I see. I kind of see that, you know, from Anakin, that pride, like he's the only one who can handle the situation. But I think it's kind of it gives him a cool perspective too. That, I mean, it's different than just bossing. He's actually involved, and I like that. Yeah,
and it, you know, we just did a video recently as well on Garandan, and it's interesting because it's like, how did Vader know about Luke Skywalker in particular? Given the later revelations, finding out about, you know, his son and all of this. And so basically once he found out who it was that was responsible for blowing up his Death Star, he's
not happy.
He's like, I will find you and I will kill you, like with my bare hands. And that was just such a fascinating thing to watch play out. Because you see that very thing where there are these Imperial officers that aren't executing what he wanted.
Yes.
And like you even see him like use the Force to choke someone on another ship. And just seeing his strength and this anger that's fueling him and pushing him to greater levels.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's just great, because not only do you feel some tension and some intimidation when Vader comes on screen, everyone else does. Like you see all the Imperials try and like back away, stormtroopers back away, like nobody wants to be close to him,
right?
Because even the replacements that he's bringing in with these officers, like just one by one he's killing them,
right? And
like no one can stand up to him.
He's not messing around.
Yeah. And you know, you even brought up how he goes down to Hoth himself.
Yep.
But even before that, we see his Star Destroyer, and I love that, because in A New Hope you basically see these massive starships. You're like, this is incredible. They're huge. And then you see them in comparison to Vader's Star Destroyer, and that thing is massive. Absolutely massive. And I think it just speaks to just the intimidation that he has and the power that he has. And so, you know, another thing, so obviously after this whole thing with going down to Hoth, and he's just hunting down Luke in particular, like yes, the rebels, but he's even kind of
wants Luke.
Yeah, he's even kind of forgotten about Leia, and like he's kind of pushed all that aside, and he wants Luke.
Yeah, because even, this is jumping a little bit forward, but even in Cloud City, he tells Lando that he can keep Leia and the Wookiee. I mean, he ends up changing his mind, but I was like, that's weird.
Yeah, he wants
he's
Luke.
like he's just a one man focus after Luke.
Yeah, and I think that especially when we're talking about him being the perfect villain, having Luke be his son, like when Palpatine is talking to him, or the Emperor, rather, when he is talking to Vader, and he's talking about the son of Skywalker, and he's saying like how is that possible? Like how can, because at this point you don't know that he's Anakin, you don't know all that. I mean, if you're like watching it for the first time, right, you don't know. And so when he's like, how is that possible? Because he, in his mind, he doesn't have kids, and so then to find out, hey, this one who blew up your Death Star, the one you're chasing, that's actually your son. But he has this line in there that's interesting, and you've talked about this quite a bit, you and I together. He has this line where he says like, oh, he's just a boy. And then he says, we can turn him. So rather than kill him, now he's already starting to change.
Yeah, because you see this shift after he finds out it's his son. Because, I mean, from the beginning, Anakin was about family. I mean, he was about protecting his mom, protecting Padme, and it just makes sense that would move on into his children. He just didn't know that they survived, I don't think. And so that kind of shifts things for him, and there's this tension now. Like, okay, the guy I've been hunting is my son. What do I do with that? Yeah,
and that's got to be very strange to have your mind set on killing somebody, and then you're like, this is the son I didn't know I have, and then you see the glimmer of Anakin come through, where he's like, no, I can turn him to the dark side,
right?
And that even as we kind of bounce around in Vader's timeline in this movie, that gets very interesting, because when it comes down to him and Luke, and we were just having a discussion before we started filming, would Vader have killed him in that moment? And I think we agreed that he wouldn't. Obviously, he harmed him. He was okay cutting off his hand, and he was saying he would kill him. He was saying he would destroy him. But I think the redemption of Anakin was, the seeds were already planted, and it's already starting.
Yep.
And that just fascinates me, to have the villain, the big bad, start to, like, he's completely evil, but you have this tinge of humanity that's starting to grow in him, and it's really, really cool.
And that's what makes him such a cool character. Like I've said before, I've never been a fan of the bad guys. Like, I like laughing, I like it when the good guys win. But since I was a child, I've always said, like, Darth Vader is like the coolest bad guy. Like, he's the perfect villain, because he's not just this, he is evil, but then you do have this humanity aspect to him. And obviously the prequels make that, like, now when I'm watching, I see, like I was just telling you, like, I see the man behind the costume. Like, I can picture Anakin in there, and so it just makes it, that brings that much more tension. It brings that much more, I guess, relatability and perspective to, it's not just this evil man in a mask. Like, it's a human being who is broken and hurt, and has a messed up life and made some wrong decisions, a lot of wrong decisions, and just kind of isolated himself and became so evil. He just doesn't care about anyone else. And then this boy shows up, and you start to see this slow transition. He's still evil, still a terrible person, but originally he wanted to kill him, and now he's like, we can turn him. So in that moment you see Anakin, that human, who loves his family, who fights for his family. You see that.
Yeah, and even in those moments, you see his anger and his hatred come out. And in particular, why I found that aspect of it fascinating, like when there's this duality of him, where you're seeing the good start to be pulled out, but you just see him, like, especially in context of episode 3 in particular, you're seeing that anger rise back up to the surface. Because what I noticed when he fights Obi-Wan on the Death Star in A New Hope, it's a lot more slow and calculated movements. And then when he's fighting Luke, he's going hard. Like,
right.
it's really intense. And what I found fascinating is it's that anger and it's that hatred that's fueling him.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like he's holding both realities at the same time. I think for the last thing for why Darth Vader in Empire Strikes Back is the perfect villain is I feel like the best way to explain it, it's like Darth Vader is extremely strategic, and
he knows what he's doing.
He's playing chess.
Mm-hmm.
All these other losers are playing checkers. He's playing chess. He's ahead of the game, because he's done with the Imperials for a moment, and he hires all these bounty hunters.
Mm-hmm.
And not just one, he gets like the best bounty hunters in the galaxy, and he wants to capture everybody. And when he finally does capture them, obviously then we get Boba. That's a whole nother thing I've got to put off. Boba's my favorite character. Not going down that rabbit trail. But when he finally catches them, then you have him like imprisoning people, and you have him torturing Han at the same time, and he's willing to let Han die to test something for Luke.
Mm-hmm.
And he even has the hyperdrive of the Millennium Falcon sabotaged because he knows how they're going to try and leave. And all of those little pieces were extremely fascinating to me because there's so much thought behind what he was doing as a villain. It wasn't just this like how Luke keeps getting called reckless by Yoda. Like Anakin wasn't. Vader, was making very calculated, precise decisions.
Yeah.
So, final thoughts. Do you have any for why Darth Vader in Empire Strikes Back is the perfect villain?
Yeah, it's not just the suit. I mean, it's him. He's an evil guy, but it's that humanity too that makes it more real. But yeah, just how he's involved, he's strategic, he does not put up with people who don't give him what he wants. Like there's no second chances. He's pretty evil. Yeah,
and he's commanding, and like you were saying, he has that dual nature of good in there somewhere. And the more you watch it, the more you can see like there's something there.
Yep.
And it leads to an awesome movie and an awesome redemption.
Yes.
Very cool. But with that, we are two Star Wars nerds, and may the Force be with you always.